God says, what you're waiting for is waiting on you. Not in a distant place, not locked behind a future date, not hidden from you by fate or fear, but standing quietly at the edge of your obedience, watching to see if you will take the next step. You have been asking for a sign, for certainty, for reassurance that the road ahead is safe. Yet God whispers that the road is made safe by walking it, that clarity follows movement, and that faith is not proven by what you feel but by what you do when feelings fall silent. There are moments when waiting feels holy, when patience feels like wisdom, when stillness feels like surrender. But there are also moments when waiting becomes a disguise for fear. When delay dresses itself as discernment, and when hesitation pretends to be humility. God sees the difference. He sees the prayers you pray and the steps you avoid. He hears the words you speak about trust while noticing the doors you refuse to touch. And still, with gentleness rather than judgment, He reminds you that what you're waiting for is waiting on you. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not disqualified because you hesitated or doubted or turned back once or twice. God's timing is not a stopwatch ticking impatiently over your head. It is a living rhythm that adjusts as you learn to walk in it. Yet there comes a moment when waiting stops being preparation and starts becoming resistance. That moment is quieter than you expect. It does not arrive with thunder or warning. It comes as a small, persistent nudge in your spirit saying, "Now, you have been praying for courage, but courage has been praying for you to show up. You have been asking God to remove fear, but fear loosens its grip only when you move your feet. God does not always take away the mountain before you climb it. Sometimes He gives you strength in your legs and waits for you to start ascending. What you're waiting for is not postponed, it is positioned right where your faith meets action. Think of how many times you asked for confirmation when the instruction was already clear. Love when it was easier to withdraw. Forgive when it felt justified to hold on. Begin when it felt safer to plan. Speak when silence seemed more comfortable. God's voice is often softer than your excuses, but it is steadier. It does not rush you, yet it does not indulge endless delay. It invites you forward, again and again, trusting that obedience will open what intention alone never could. There is a blessing that only responds to movement. There is a door that opens only when you place your hand on the handle. There is a river that parts only when you step into its edge. God has already gone ahead of you, but He does not drag you behind Him. Love honors your agency. Faith respects your choice. Heaven does not force what your heart must freely give. What you're waiting for is waiting on you to agree with God through action. You may feel unready, but readiness is rarely a feeling. It is a decision to trust God more than your own assessment of yourself. Moses felt unready. Esther felt unready. Peter felt unready. Yet God does not call the ready, He readies the called as they respond. The moment you say yes with your life, not just your lips, grace begins to supply what confidence could not. Waiting has taught you patience, but now patience must learn to walk. Prayer has softened your heart, but now softness must become strength. Faith has grown inside you, but now it must breathe in the open air of risk. God is not asking you to be reckless. He is asking you to be responsive. There is a difference. Recklessness runs ahead without listening. Responsiveness moves forward because it has listened long enough. You wonder why things feel stalled, why doors seem quiet, why progress feels slow despite your prayers. Sometimes heaven is silent not because it has nothing to say, but because it has already spoken. God does not repeat instructions endlessly when obedience is the missing reply. Silence can be an invitation to act, a sacred pause where heaven waits to see if you will trust what you already know. What you're waiting for might be the version of you that finally believes God means what He says. The healed relationship may be waiting for your humility. The new opportunity may be waiting for your discipline. The answered prayer may be waiting for your consistency. God's promises are not fragile, but they are relational. They unfold in partnership, not passivity. Do not confuse God's patience with approval of delay. His kindness is meant to lead you forward, not keep you comfortable. Comfort can be a quiet thief. It does not break in loudly, it settles in gently, convincing you that tomorrow will be better for obedience than today. But tomorrow is not guaranteed, and growth rarely happens in ideal conditions. God works with what is available now, not with what might exist later. You have survived seasons that should have broken you. You have learned lessons you never asked for. You have gained wisdom through pain and endurance through disappointment. These were not meant only to make you stronger, they were meant to make you ready to move. What you're waiting for has been shaped by the very journey you've been walking, and now it waits for you to recognize that you are more prepared than you think. God sees your desire to get it right. He honors your longing to please Him. But obedience is not about perfection, it is about direction. A flawed step forward pleases God more than a flawless plan that never leaves your mind. He can redirect a moving heart more easily than a stationary one. Trust Him enough to begin imperfectly. There is a moment when faith shifts from believing God can to believing God will meet you in motion. That is where miracles often happen. Not in the safety of certainty, but in the vulnerability of obedience. The water does not part while you analyze it. It parts when your foot touches it. God meets you at the edge of your willingness. What you're waiting for is not mocking you. It is not impatient with you. It is simply waiting. Waiting for you to become brave enough to choose growth over familiarity. Waiting for you to release what no longer serves your calling. Waiting for you to trust that God's instructions are always aligned with His love, even when they stretch you. You may be afraid of making the wrong move. But paralysis guarantees no move at all. God is not asking you to predict every outcome. He is asking you to trust Him with the outcome. Your responsibility is the step, His responsibility is the result. When you confuse the two, anxiety grows. When you separate them, peace returns. Remember how many times God has already carried you through what you thought you couldn't survive. The same faithfulness that sustained you then is available now. He has not changed. His power has not weakened. The only question is whether you will allow yesterday's testimony to fuel today's obedience. Sometimes what you're waiting for is not a thing but a transformation. A shift from asking to acting. From wishing to working. From hoping to holding on through effort. God is less interested in impressing you with sudden change than in forming you through faithful steps. Character grows slowly, but it carries blessings farther. You do not need more information, you need more trust. You do not need a louder voice, you need a braver response. God has already placed within you what you need to begin. The gifts may feel small, the resources limited, the confidence shaky, but obedience multiplies what fear minimizes. What you're waiting for is waiting on you to align your life with your prayers. To let your schedule reflect your values. To let your actions echo your words. To let your faith become visible through consistency. God listens closely to what you do, not just to what you say. There will always be reasons to wait longer. There will always be voices suggesting caution, comfort, delay. But there will also always be a quiet invitation from God saying, "Trust me here." That invitation does not shout. It does not pressure. It simply remains, patient and persistent, until you decide whether you will answer it. You are not being asked to leap blindly. You are being asked to step faithfully. One step does not require full vision, only enough light for the next move. God rarely illuminates the entire path at once, not because He wants to frustrate you, but because He wants to walk with you. Dependence keeps you close. What you're waiting for is waiting on you to let go of who you were so you can become who you are called to be. Growth requires release. New seasons demand new habits. God does not waste what you've learned, but He will not let you live forever in what you've outgrown. You might feel the weight of responsibility, the fear of disappointing others, the pressure of expectations. But obedience to God simplifies what people complicate. When you choose to honor Him, clarity replaces chaos. Even when the path is hard, the heart becomes lighter because it knows it is aligned. God is not withholding from you. He is inviting you. The delay you feel is not always heaven's resistance, sometimes it is heaven's readiness. Waiting for your agreement. What you're waiting for is waiting on you to say yes with your feet, your time, your effort, your life. This is not a message of hurry, but of honesty. Not a call to rush, but a call to respond. There is a difference between moving too fast and not moving at all. God's pace is purposeful. When you walk with Him, you will not miss what is meant for you. Take the step you've been praying about. Speak the word you've been holding back. Begin the work you've been planning endlessly. Forgive the person you've been waiting to change. Trust God enough to move before everything makes sense. What you're waiting for is already leaning toward you. Heaven is attentive. Grace is ready. The moment you move, you will discover that God was never asking you to go alone. He was waiting to walk with you, and when you look back one day, you will realize that the miracle was not only what changed around you, but what changed within you the moment you stopped waiting and started trusting. God was faithful all along. The blessing was never far away. It was waiting on you. And now you have finally arrived. Do not underestimate the power of a single obedient moment. History with God is rarely rewritten by dramatic gestures. It is reshaped by quiet decisions that align the heart with truth. One choice to trust when doubt feels louder. One act of obedience when no one is applauding. One moment of courage when retreat would feel easier. These moments may seem small, but in God's hands they become turning points. What you're waiting for is often unlocked by what you choose when the moment arrives without spectacle. You have imagined that when the time is right, you will feel different. Stronger. More confident. Less afraid. But God often works the other way around. He invites you to move while you still feel uncertain so that, through movement, strength is built. Confidence grows through obedience, not before it. Peace settles after the step, not always before. Waiting for a feeling to change before you act can quietly become a way of avoiding the very growth you're praying for. God knows the questions that keep circling your mind. What if it fails? What if I misunderstood? What if I lose something important? These questions are human, not sinful. But they are not meant to lead your life. Faith does not eliminate questions, it simply refuses to let them have the final word. God does not promise that every step will feel safe, but He does promise that no obedient step is ever wasted. There are doors that will not open through prayer alone. Prayer prepares the heart, but obedience turns the key. God honors prayer that leads to action, and action that remains rooted in prayer. When the two walk together, waiting loses its heaviness and becomes expectation. What you're waiting for is waiting on you to live as if you trust the God you pray to. You may still be healing. Still learning. Still shedding old patterns and fears. God is not offended by this process. But healing is not meant to end in isolation. Growth is not meant to remain hidden. At some point, what God has been doing in you must begin to flow through you. The healing you received becomes hope for others. The lessons you learned become guidance. The strength you gained becomes service. What you're waiting for is often connected to someone else's breakthrough as well. Do not let comparison slow you down. Someone else's pace is not your assignment. Someone else's calling is not your responsibility. God deals with you personally, patiently, precisely. What looks like delay in your life may be deep preparation. What looks like speed in another's life may carry challenges you cannot see. Trust the path God has chosen for you, and move when He tells you to move. There is a holy dissatisfaction stirring in you for a reason. It is not meant to make you restless, it is meant to make you responsive. Comfort can dull discernment, but hunger sharpens it. That inner nudge, that quiet unrest, that sense that there must be more than this is not a complaint against your current life. It is an invitation into the next step of obedience. God is not calling you away from peace, He is calling you into deeper peace. The kind of peace that comes from alignment rather than avoidance. The kind of peace that remains even when circumstances are challenging because the heart knows it is walking in truth. When you stop waiting and start obeying, confusion begins to lift, and even hard paths carry clarity. You may not see immediate results. Seeds obeyed today do not always bloom tomorrow. But God is faithful to growth. What you plant in obedience will rise in its season. Waiting for visible proof before acting keeps you trapped in the present. Trusting God enough to act before proof appears opens the future. Let go of the idea that obedience must feel heroic. Most obedience is ordinary. Showing up when you'd rather withdraw. Being consistent when enthusiasm fades. Choosing integrity when shortcuts are available. These choices shape a life that God can trust with greater responsibility. What you're waiting for is waiting on you to be faithful in what feels small. God is not impressed by hesitation disguised as wisdom. He values discernment, but discernment always leads somewhere. It leads to a decision, a direction, a response. When you know what God has asked of you, remaining still out of fear is no longer caution, it is resistance. And even then, God remains patient, gently reminding you that His way leads to life. You are closer than you think. The distance between you and what you're waiting for may be no more than a single obedient step. Not a leap across the unknown, but a step into trust. That step may feel vulnerable. It may feel exposed. But it is there that God meets you most clearly. He is not watching to see if you will fail. He is watching to walk with you. His grace does not wait at the finish line, it moves with you along the way. Every step taken in faith invites His presence more deeply into your daily life. What you're waiting for is not waiting for perfection. It is waiting for participation. Heaven is not delayed by your humanity, it is activated by your willingness. When you finally move, you will realize that God has already made room for your obedience, so breathe. Release the pressure to have everything figured out. Trust the God who has never failed you yet. And when the quiet invitation comes again, as it surely will, do not ignore it. Answer it with action, because what you're waiting for has been waiting patiently, lovingly, faithfully for you to move. And when you do, you will discover that the waiting was never meant to keep you still, but to prepare you to walk forward with God. One day you will recognize this season not as a delay, but as a doorway. You will see that the tension you felt was not meant to torment you, but to awaken you. God was loosening your grip on comfort so you could reach for purpose. He was quiet not because he was absent, but because he was waiting for your trust to mature into movement. You have learned enough. You have prayed enough. You have prepared more than you realize. At some point, preparation must give way to participation. God does not reveal everything at once because he desires relationship, not control. Each step invites conversation. Each act of obedience becomes a prayer lived out loud. Do not fear the cost of obedience more than the cost of staying where you are. Staying still has a price too. Dreams slowly dim. Passion weakens. Faith becomes theoretical instead of alive. God does not want you surviving on memories of what he once spoke. He wants you living in alignment with what he is saying now. You are not being pushed. You are being called. There is a difference. Pushing creates pressure, calling creates purpose. God's call respects your pace but challenges your comfort. It waits for your response without withdrawing the invitation. Love is patient, but love is also honest. When you step forward, you may still feel fear walking beside you. Let it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to obey God anyway. Fear loses authority when obedience takes the lead. Each step weakens fear's voice and strengthens faith's confidence. What you're waiting for is not on the other side of perfection. It is on the other side of surrender. Surrender does not mean losing yourself, it means finding yourself aligned with God's design. When you release control, you gain clarity. When you release timing, you gain peace. God has already accounted for your weaknesses. He factored in your doubts, your past, your limitations. None of these disqualify you. They become places where his strength is revealed most clearly. He is not surprised by what intimidates you. He is present within it. You may stumble. You may question yourself mid-step. That does not cancel obedience. Growth is rarely graceful, but it is always meaningful when rooted in trust. God does not abandon you when you move imperfectly. He walks closer. Let this be the moment you stop asking for permission from fear. Stop negotiating with comfort. Stop waiting for ideal conditions that never arrive. Let this be the moment you trust that God's invitation is enough. The step may be quiet. No applause. No immediate confirmation. Just a sense of alignment deep within your spirit. That is often how God works. He builds lives from the inside out. What you're waiting for will meet you as you move. Strength will rise when it is needed. Wisdom will come when decisions appear. Grace will cover what effort cannot. God is faithful to those who trust Him enough to walk, and when the waiting finally breaks, when the door opens, when the prayer begins to answer itself through obedience, you will understand. God was never withholding. He was preparing partnership. You were not meant to wait forever. You were meant to walk with God. What you're waiting for is waiting on you, and now, you know what to do.